Welcome to the Explainer.
Okay, picture this. It's the 1840s in South Carolina. We're in a world built on rice, cotton, and of course the brutal institution of slavery. But on one particular plantation, Ashford Hall, a story was about to unfold that would challenge the very bedrock of that society. It's a story that left behind a mystery so deep, it would take more than 100 years to even start putting the pieces together.
So, it all kicks off with a disaster. In June of 1847, Ashford Hall goes up in flames. The master of the house, a Colonel Edmund Ashford, is found dead in the wreckage. The official story? A terrible, tragic accident. But, as you're about to see, that was nowhere near the end of the story.
And then, silence. For 121 years, the story goes cold. Fast forward to 1968. A team of archaeologists is digging through the overgrown ruins of the old plantation house when they stumble onto something. Something that was never ever meant to be found. A secret room, tucked away behind a wall and sealed shut by the very fire that started this whole thing.
And what they found inside that room completely turns the historical record on its head. It wasn't one body, it was two. And that, right there, is our central question. What really happened on that fiery night? And who were these two people locked together in death inside that hidden room? To figure this out, we have to go back in time. We need to walk the halls of Ashford Hall before the fire and meet the people who lived there, all of them trapped in this incredibly tense web of power, secrets, and oppression. At the heart of this whole mystery is the dynamic between three key people. First, you've got Colonel Edmund Ashford, the master of the plantation, the man with absolute power. Then there's his wife, Margaret. Now, she came from a big-name Charleston family, but she was becoming more and more of an outsider in her own home. And then there was Clara, an enslaved woman who somehow had this strange, almost unsettling level of authority in the house that confused everyone and absolutely infuriated the mistress, Margaret. You can actually feel Margaret's growing fear in her own letters. She talks about the house feeling different. She writes about this menacing quality to the silence, a feeling that something is deeply wrong. It's pretty clear she felt like she was living in a home that wasn't really hers anymore. After Edmund's death in the fire, his will is read, and it is an absolute bombshell. It reveals a plan that was just unthinkable for that time and place. He didn't just want to free Clara. He was leaving her a small fortune. He literally wrote that it was his way of trying to do justice in a system built on injustice. You can imagine, this document lit a legal fire that would rage for years. But we also get this incredibly rare glimpse into Clara's own mind, from a journal that's believed to be hers. And she wasn't just some passive character in his plan. No, she was deeply skeptical. She knew the score. She understood that as long as the law defined her as property, this whole idea of making it right was almost impossible. For her, hope was a dangerous thing. So how on earth did Edmund plan to pull this off? I mean, this was way more than just writing a will. He actually spent years carefully building a secret plan, all designed to defy the entire social and legal system of his world. I mean, just look at how deliberate this was. He hired a carpenter. That's how the hidden room got there. He opened a secret bank account and was quietly stashing cash in it. He talked to multiple lawyers, trying to find any loophole he could. He even went public and petitioned the state legislature to try and get her freed. This wasn't a sudden change of heart. This was a calculated, long-term operation. And to really get how radical this was, you just have to look at the money. $17,000. In 1847, that was an astronomical sum of money. We're talking over $500,000 today. By leaving this to an enslaved woman, Edmund wasn't just bending the rules, he was trying to shatter them completely. But his biggest opponent was the law itself. The act of freeing an enslaved person, which is called manumission, was something the state actively fought against. The legislature made it so difficult, requiring their personal approval for every single case, that it basically never happened. Edmund was trying to push a mountain. Okay, so after the fire and Edmund's death, the fight moves out of the secret rooms of Ashford Hall and into the very public courtrooms of Charleston. What came next was a 4-year legal war over his will and, ultimately, over Clara's life. And this timeline just shows you how the system crushed Edmund's plan, piece by piece. First, a court says her freedom is void. She's still property. Then the Supreme Court sets up this impossible catch-22. She can only get the money if she's free, but the law says she can't be freed.
And finally, the legislature delivers the killing blow and denies the petition. The system won. The whole court case really boiled down to these two completely opposite arguments. The family claimed Edmund was insane, that he had an obsession, and that Clara had manipulated him. The defense, on the other hand, argued he was perfectly sane, that he acted deliberately, and that he was simply using his right as a property owner to do what he wanted with his property, including his human property.
And this was the final result. After 4 years stuck in legal limbo, the court gave its final, devastating verdict. Clara was not free. She could not inherit anything. She was property, and she was to be sold at public auction.
But hold on, this is where the story takes its wildest turn. We have to go back to 1968, back to that hidden room in the ashes, because the physical evidence tells a totally different story from the one written down in all those court records.
So, let's ask that question one more time. Now that we know the whole official story, what was really in that room? What did the bones have to say that the documents were hiding?
The forensics laid out the cold, hard facts. Edmund Ashford didn't die by accident. He was murdered, hit on the head before the fire really got going. And with him, in that secret room, were the remains of an African-American woman. She had died from smoke inhalation. The evidence was clear. They died together that same night.
And here it is, the impossible contradiction. The court documents, the letters, the entire paper trail tells us that Clara lived for 4 more years and was sold in 1851. But the archaeology, the actual science, proves that she died in that fire in 1847. Both of these things cannot be true.
So, to solve this paradox, historians have come up with a theory that is just mind-bending. What if the woman who was part of that 4-year court battle, the woman who was ultimately sold, wasn't Clara at all? What if, in all the chaos after the fire, another enslaved woman was forced to take her place, allowing the real Clara story to end right there, in that hidden room?
And that is the question that haunts this entire story. Because if that theory is true, we're left with 2 ghosts. The real Clara, who died with a man who tried and failed to free her, and another woman whose name is completely lost to history, who was forced to live a lie, endure a court battle, and be sold into slavery under a name that wasn't even her own. It's a mystery that shows the deepest, darkest human cost of a system designed not just to own people, but to completely erase them.
Subscribe to the Hub of Crime Analysis.
Analysis.